I lost my marriage because of a joke we laughed at.
I never imagined that a harmless joke at a dinner party would one day dismantle the life I had spent years building. Back then, my world felt solid. I was married to the woman I loved, raising 2 children in a quiet neighborhood, convinced that trust and routine were enough to protect a marriage. I was wrong. I met my wife when we were young, before responsibilities and disappointments reshaped us. She had this way of laughing that just pulled people in, and when she chose me, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We grew together, we struggled together, and we celebrated all the little milestones. Marriage didn't always feel exciting, but it felt safe. We had history, shared sacrifices, and children who depended on us. I really believe that was unbreakable. Years into our marriage, we were at a small dinner with friends. It was one of those loud, relaxed nights fueled by too much wine. Someone suggested a silly game where you name a celebrity you'd hypothetically be allowed to be with if the impossible ever happened. I laughed it off as childish nonsense, but when it was my wife's turn, she answered instantly, no hesitation. No embarrassment. Just a name. At the time, I brushed off the strange feeling that settled in my chest. I told myself it was just a fantasy, just words, just a joke. I convinced myself trust meant not asking questions. Life moved on and the game became nothing more than a forgotten memory, or so I thought. Years passed. Our kids got older. Our conversations became more practical than passionate. We still cared for each other, but comfort had replaced closeness. I didn't notice the distance forming because distance grows quietly, it doesn't announce itself. Everything unraveled when my wife traveled out of town for a work conference. It wasn't unusual, and I didn't object, but something felt off. Her calls felt rushed, her messages vague. When she texted that her flight home was delayed, I accepted it until I learned that someone else on the same trip had already landed. That was the moment doubt stopped being theoretical. That night stretched on forever. My calls went unanswered, my messages were left unread. By the time my phone finally rang, my heart was already preparing for impact. She sounded different, excited, careless, intoxicated by something more than alcohol. And then she said it. She had met him. The same celebrity from that stupid game years ago. She was with him, and she said it like it made sense. She told me she thought she had permission, that it was just once, that it didn't mean anything. I felt my world collapse in slow motion. There was no screaming on my end, no dramatic outburst, just a silence so heavy it hurt to breathe. When she came home the next morning, she looked like someone who had crossed a line and couldn't find her way back. She apologized through tears, blamed confusion, alcohol, fantasy. I listened, numb, realizing the betrayal wasn't just physical, it was deliberate. It was chosen. Later, I found the message he sent her. It was casual, hopeful, proof that it hadn't ended where she claimed it had. That one message erased the last piece of doubt I had about what to do next. Asking for a divorce felt unreal, like speaking words meant for someone else's life. Telling our children was worse. Their confusion, their anger, their heartbreak that carved into me deeper than anything my wife had done. Watching them try to understand why their family was breaking was the moment I knew I could never undo this damage. The weeks that followed were brutal. Lawyers, schedules, silence in a house that once echoed with noise. My wife moved out. The children split their time. The word normal lost its meaning. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I had failed by not forgiving, by not fighting harder. But every time I imagined staying, I saw a future filled with suspicion and resentment. Love cannot survive without trust. Slowly, painfully, we adjusted. I learned how to be both parents at once. I learned how strong my children were, even when they were hurting. And I learned that betrayal doesn't always come from hatred sometimes. It comes from selfishness dressed up as fantasy. I don't hate my ex-wife. I don't wish her suffering. But I no longer protect her choices with my silence. A joke planted a seed, and years later, that seed grew into the end of our marriage. Today, my life looks different than the one I imagined. It's quieter, harder in some ways, but stronger in others. I am no longer a husband, but I am still a father. And that more than anything is what keeps me moving forward.